Don't let your kids watch it!
Time to make the chimney fucking chompers.
Language!
That's what I do. I drink, and I know things.
Welcome to the Nerdcast with your hosts, Dark Samus 288 and Snakeskin 94. On this episode of the Nerdcast, we take a look at Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Nerdcast. I'm Dark Samus 288.
I'm Snakeskin.
And one thing I want to say before we get this mammoth of a review started.
This is going to be a thick volume.
Oh, yes. What I want to say is I want to explain why we never reviewed Solo. Snakeskin didn't watch it because he was still kind of burnt out from Last Jedi, and he did eventually tell me that it did leave a sour taste in his mouth. He was very iffy, but in the end, he didn't like it, which is fine. I totally understand it. I'm one of the rare few that actually did enjoy it. So, but I will say from my perspective, every time I've watched, like, I thought Solo was really good when I first watched it, but every subsequent time I've seen it, I've liked it less and less. So
this all has a point, people. Stay with us.
So fuck that movie. Let's go on to this.
Yeah, so Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Okay, so so it was funny. You said that every time you saw Solo, you liked it less and less. But it was funny. You were telling me before we started recording that you have kind of the opposite opinion of Rise of Skywalker, which you've seen twice now.
Mm-hmm.
I've only seen it once, and I can tell you people, just to set the tone of this review, I'm aware this is a low bar to some people. To some people, it's not a bar at all. But I liked it more than I like Last Jedi. In fact, I liked this so much more than I like Last Jedi. It made me dislike Last Jedi even more. Does that make sense?
In some respects. And again, as IGN put it, people who liked Last Jedi and how different it was are going to not really get a lot out of Rise of Skywalker. And in some aspects, yeah, which we will get to. Don't worry. But the whole thing is, with this movie and the trilogy as a whole, which I know Snakeskin has a bullet list of what we're going to kind of encompass everything with.
Oh, yeah.
The whole thing is Force Awakens was a soft reboot of the franchise.
Yes, it was like God of War 4. Is it a continuation? Yes, it is. Does it play on the similar themes and exist in the same world? Yes, it does. Do familiar faces show up? Yes, they do. But yes, soft reboot.
And then Last Jedi pulled it really far out there.
It's like that Filthy Frank meme. Things went 0 to 100 really quick.
Now, the same thing, like with most people, it was a little bit too out there and not in a good way. Now, myself, I thought it was okay because I knew that Force Awakens was a soft reboot and that it was very much designed to be a soft reboot. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So I'm okay with it going a different direction. But Rise of Skywalker, it felt like J.J. Abrams took the tug of war rope and tried pulling it so far in the opposite direction.
It's a tonal, it's a genre, and it's a creative whiplash. That's what that is.
It felt like this whole series as a whole, you had The Force Awakens in the middle, Last Jedi pulling it as far as they could, and then Rise of Skywalker pulling it back towards the other direction. which is not a good way to have your movies, to have your trilogy.
I know, and look, I know how this looks, right? You know, people are looking at this, right? Oh, look, it's two white dudes with neck beards that are talking about Star Wars. But listen, we're not pretentious. Okay, we're not red letter media or over here. Okay, we very much love Star Wars. You know what I mean? Not like, oh, we just love the original trilogy, but we talk about Star Wars to talk shit on the prequels or the new movies. I mean, you can watch our reviews of the prequels, and except for Attack of the Clones, we love the prequels.
Because we have the Nerdcast care.
Yeah, we at the Nerdcast care, I mean, it's, we know a lot about the mythology, there's highs and lows, we have very much stuck with this franchise, you know what I mean? I know I didn't see Solo, but I mean, honestly, I've been alive 25 years. I think I'm allowed to miss like a thing, you know what I mean? So I don't want to say we're real fans, but when I say we're fans that love Star Wars, I genuinely mean that we genuinely, literally love Star Wars. That being said, there's a lot to say. I'm gonna set the tone for this review. We're gonna Quentin Tarantino it, where I'm gonna say something right now at the beginning that is meant to be said at the beginning, but it's also something that's said at the end. And this is what it is, okay? This entire trilogy will always be remembered in my head as like one of the greatest pieces of wasted potential in cinematic history. But let's go back. Let's rewind the clock. We jump forward. Let's go back and let's get into it. Any other opening thoughts from you, Samus, before we get into it?
Honestly, not really. Let's get this shit rolling and see where it goes.
Okay, so normally whenever we've reviewed anything, we kind of like go through the plot and give our opinions as we go. I thought we could try something different because this movie's fresh in everyone's mind. It's like folks know how it ends. If anyone's having any trouble remembering anything, it's because the pacing in the first half was so lightning quick, because the problem with moving at the speed of light is you can only live in the shadows. But anyway, so I thought we're just gonna we're gonna take that part and we're gonna kind of just like move it to the side, and we're just gonna go right into it and hit the plot points. We're not gonna angry Joe it where our review of this movie is 2 hours. Did you see that?
I did not.
Yeah, he listed he saw the movie and he was like, everything wrong with The Last Jedi, and it was like 2 hours. I was like, oh my god. Okay, so
oh my word, this tune is annoying. Yes, I know, it's really annoying.
I have in my Samsung Notes by Android. In my Samsung Notes, I have different categories and subcategories for how we're going to dissect this movie, but we can't talk about this movie without talking about the whole trilogy. So I've tried to space it out accordingly. Okay, so as I have written here in my notes, this is the rise of bullshit. Let's start with the plot. Overall opinion of the story, and by the story I mean of Rise of Skywalker specifically. Overall, it was rushed. I can't really say it was a mess, but it was rushed. Like, that's the most thing I could say. I mean, I kind of just have the same opinions of these characters that I had since the first movie. I mean, well, that's not true because I began to like Rey more in Last Jedi, but I think Finn and Poe are really good characters. I like Kylo Ren. I thought bringing back the Emperor was awesome. Just wish it had more buildup. And I thought that considering all the hurdles that this movie had to overcome, I feel like it ended probably the best way that it could have. Like, do I like it more than Last Jedi? Yes. Do I like it more than Force Awakens? I mean, maybe, because for better or for worse, this did tell a mostly original story. Yes, the second half was basically Return of the Jedi, but bro, it's the Emperor at his throne. Of course it was going to be Return of the Jedi, but overall, I thought that this was... You see, that's just it. Is this the best one of the whole trilogy? I would make the argument maybe, but I guess I'll get to that later. But overall, unlike Last Jedi, where it took me like 2 years to decide that I didn't like it, this one I can safely say, you know what? I liked it.
For myself,
yes,
I do have to say that outside of the pacing, which I'm sure we will get to,
yes,
I have to say the first time I left the theater, I was left incredibly conflicted. Because there were some things I liked, some things I didn't like.
Yes.
Some things
Which is
I
funny.
really didn't like. But,
which is funny, because that was me when I saw Last Jedi.
Now, the thing was, I knew probably, truthfully, that I just needed to ruminate. I just needed to let it sit in my brain for a little bit. And I did manage to go see it again. And knowing everything that I do in terms of like how the story is going to play out, knowing those things and watching it again, I did enjoy it a lot more than I did the first time. Again, I would probably say it's pretty similar to Force Awakens in terms of my enjoyability of it. Because even though I did like Last Jedi, I did say, and I still agree, that it's not as structurally sound as Force Awakens was.
No.
And therefore, Force Awakens is by default kind of a better movie.
Yes.
So even though I did like Last Jedi, it's still dead last in this trilogy. But I would say it's probably about on par with Force Awakens, if not a little bit lower.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. This movie just kind of makes Last Jedi stick out like a sore thumb more. It makes it feel like the redheaded stepchild more, which is funny because red was that movie's main color palette. So, subpoint number two about the story. What was our least favorite moment of the story? So, for me, the closest I can think of to at least off the top of my head right now, the least that I can think of off the top of my head of a least favorite moment was it's two things, but they're more like points rather than whole scenes. The first one is probably I felt that the island of ex-stormtroopers was a very, very, very neat and cool idea that went nowhere and did not get any good explanation or worthwhile follow-up. And the other thing I would say is I thought that the destruction of that planet that they took C-3PO to, I felt like that didn't need to happen. I thought it was a little not gratuitous. I just feel like they just did it to do it. Oh, actually, I can think of my least favorite moment. They made it look like they were going to kill C-3PO, and they didn't treat it seriously whatsoever at all.
Same thing with Chewie.
Oh, we're getting to that. That was different. With Chewie, there was weight and gravitas. With C-3PO, they were cracking jokes, and no one cared that he might not get his memory back, and the whole thing was played like for laughs. You know, that was probably my least favorite moment. I really didn't like how that scene was shot and scripted and went down, because it's like, because this is like someone that's been there since the first movie. He's like, you know, it's like, I may not get my memories back from this, and Poe's just like, yeah, 3PO, just get your ass in the chair. And I'm like,
yeah.
I didn't like how that was written. What was your favorite moment?
For me, I'm going to open up a whole can of worms here.
Oh boy.
My least favorite moment of this movie,
This is gonna be good.
when Rey finds out she's a Palpatine. Not just that part, not when she finds out. No, when she's talking to Luke, and Luke's like, because you're a Palpatine. Yes, we all knew it. What? What? How the fuck did you know that?
Well, the Force. Hey, look, man. I'm not defending it. I'm not defending this whatsoever, but it's really not all that different from Return of the Jedi, where Luke's like, "You knew Vader was my father." He's like, "He told me Vader killed my father," and I said, "No, Darth Vader killed Anakin Skywalker to become Darth Vader. So I did tell you the truth from a certain point of view."
Yeah, that was kind of bullshit, but
this was pretty bullshit.
But the reasoning that it was such bullshit to me was because I remember way back in 2016 when everyone was saying Rise of Skywalker, Rise of Solo, Rise of Palpatine. Wait, hold up. Rey is a Palpatine?
I remember those two.
What? I thought that was the most preposterous thing ever. And they actually canonize it.
Well, because everyone knew that I feel like nobody really believed. Well, before Last Jedi came out, I really don't think people believed that they were actually going to go with Rey just being a nobody, because it's Star Wars. So, and dude, there were so many wacky theories. Remember when people thought Snoke was Mace Windu?
Yes, I do. Now, here's the other reason why I think it's bullshit. Look, the thing was, I do think that the whole Rey was a nobody in Last Jedi. Yeah, it was handled pretty clunkily. But the theming of that was supposed to be kind of making it so that the Force was not just a specific bloodline, that it could be anyone, which I like the theming. It was just handled very clunkily.
Yes.
In fact, the theming of the whole Last Jedi was really good, but it was handled really clunkily.
I can get behind that.
But with this one, it felt like this was JJ's way, which, by the way, Jar Jar Abrams may still be on the table with this one. Let's just say that.
Oh, no.
And it felt like J.J. Abrams was trying to say, see, that's why she was so powerful. I had a plan the whole time.
Just like how Darth Vader was always planning to be Luke's dad. Just like how Han shot, just like how Greedo shot first, just like how Tetsuya Nomura was thinking of Birth by Sleep by the time Chain of Memories came out. It's like, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I mean the fact.
It's like I don't trust. It's like, has anyone ever seen X-Files? The Chris Carter effect? That's real. Riding by the seat of your pants for the whole thing. Oh yeah. No. I always intended for Mulder and Scully to get together, have a son, and then the show gets hijacked by Robert Patterson. No, you didn't.
Just like J.J. Abrams in his own fucking TV show saying, oh yes, I knew all along that all of Lost was just going to be a dream. No, you fucking did not. You wrote that just because you couldn't think of an ending.
Hey, to be fair, he was only there like the first season.
I know.
I think.
But what really made it stick out in my eyes was the fact that if Kylo had just said, you know why he's after you, because you're his granddaughter, and then everything progressed, I would have been a lot more okay with it, because it would have been like, hey, it's a review, but it's not a huge thing. No, they had to go and add the line, you are a Palpatine. Like, fuck you, dude, movie.
Empress Palpatine.
That was cool. That was fucking cool.
Okay, so next up we have most favorite moment. You know, I have to be honest with you. The scene where Emperor Palpatine EMP nukes the battlefield with his lightning hands.
That was the moment that my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, what? That's fucking awesome.
That was so sick. I love the Emperor so much, and it's that might have been my favorite part in that movie, just because it was so crazy and so ridiculous. But because it's the Emperor, it just works.
My favorite scene. It was that. I definitely think that was a really good scene, but I've always been I would always fangasm over the lightsaber duels when they're on top of the Death Star 2 fighting, and they're giving it everything they have to the point of total exhaustion. That was awesome.
That was like the best saber fight of this trilogy.
Especially right at the very end where Leia did one last call to Ben and faded into the Force.
Bro, my poor mother, when we watched that scene, she was crying.
I was welling up with tears myself. I'm like,
my dad was trying not to, he was trying to be the, strong-hearted, practical, boomer guy. He's like, well, they had to do something because she died. And I'm like, Dad, it's okay. We're bummed too. I mean, bro, that's Princess Leia. I'm sorry, Commander Organa or whatever.
Yeah, General Organa, we will miss you. Now, I will say, the fight on the Death Star, but my favorite section of this scene is where once that happens, it stops Kylo Ren in his tracks, and Rey puts that stab onto him, but realizing that it was Leia who just passed on to the Force to try and save her son, Force heals Kylo. That was so powerful.
That was really good.
That was so powerful.
That was really good. So, last bit of the plot that I made a section for. What were your thoughts on the Chewie psych?
Well, I have to say that
I thought that
Daisy Ridley's acting for when she thinks she may have killed Chewie.
Yeah.
Where she does that emotional scream. I'm like, damn, that's good.
That was really good. I thought that they randomly grew the biggest set of balls, and they were just gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna just fucking kill Chewbacca. I was gonna be like, holy shit.
Now, I've heard some people say, which I know we have a thing for the fan base in a little bit, but I know that there's one person, who was it? I think it was Critical Drinker.
Oh, I love that guy. I love that guy.
That when they did the whole Chewie psych out thing, he's just like, it seemed like I thought this movie was going to be so stupid enough to be like, yeah, we're going to kill Chewie. What of it?
They subverted our expectations.
Yes. He thought they were going to be that stupid to do that. They just weren't going to care enough.
Oh, man. So next I have a section for, I thought it'd be a good idea to because again, we can't just talk about him in this movie without comparing him to the trilogy. So I have a section for the heroes of this movie. So first, I was gonna start. This is kind of a quick overview. Opinion on them in this movie. Poe's had like almost no character development, but he's awesome. Like what I mean by
mainly because Oscar Isaac carries that role and does a great job with it.
Now, don't get me wrong. His character does things, and his character goes places, and he rises in position from where he started out. So, like, Poe starts out as like a pilot or whatever, but then at the end, he's taken General Leia's position as leading the rebellion, not the rebellion, the resistance dudes. And but his character overall kind of stays in one place. Finn, again, he's a good character, but he doesn't really go through that much evolution as one. If anything else, maybe he gets a little more confidence and but his confidence and his need to feel accepted outside of being a stormtrooper is kind of put on the back burner, and they never delve into his past as a stormtrooper, which I thought could have been a really interesting story to tell, especially when it looked like he was going to be the star of this trilogy, but then it went to Rey. And talking about Rey.
Now, one thing I will say about Finn, one specific scene that was never addressed in the movie, but was actually confirmed by J.J. Abrams, was the fact that when they're sinking in that quicksand on Pisana, and Finn says, "Rey, I have something to tell you," and then they go down and they never explain it. It was going to be Finn saying to Rey that he was force sensitive.
Yeah, I saw that.
And New Rockstars actually put a theory about where the Emperor was trying to find a force-sensitive child who was strong in the Force to take his place. And for the lower-level force-sensitive kids, they put them in as Force Order stormtroopers so that they couldn't fight back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I felt like Finn was actually a pretty good setup for a character in Force Awakens, but it was squandered with Last Jedi because he already knows the tragedies of war. He was an ex-stormtrooper.
Yes.
And I believe Nostalgia Critic put it that it should have been him and Poe going to Canto Bight and Finn telling Poe that there's only one thing in the galaxy that gets you this rich, and that's war. Because Finn would have been much more equipped to explain that since he was a part of it.
But no, they had to they had to nerf Poe in Last Jedi and give all his character development to Rose Tico,
which she barely had a character in this one.
Which is funny you mentioned that because I wanted to bring up our opinions on the characters and comparing them to how they were in Last Jedi. I guess we kind of answered that, but Luke here, I didn't hate Luke Skywalker in this movie, so that was nice.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like, for the most part, it felt like he was like, yeah, I fucked up, but you showed me that shouldn't define who I am. Because, yeah, I'm human. I fuck up sometimes. And I was wrong. And I loved that. Especially when he catches the lightsaber and is like, how dare you mistreat a weapon? No, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. I'm like, yes. And then finding out that, yes, he did train Leia. And you got to see them do a little fight scene with archived footage. That was amazing.
That was cool. Then there was, let me see here. Then there was Rey. I mean, again, I feel like Rey is a little better in each movie, whereas in the first one she was kind of flat. But I feel like I can't remember if I said this already, but on recording, or if I just set this off camera. But like, I feel like, so like if you watch the original trilogy, right, you could very clearly see like Luke, right? He starts off from this, this nervous rookie kid to this headstrong, not arrogant, but still, just hot-headed youth Jedi. And then in Return of the Jedi, he's like a Jedi Master, and he's still the same character, but he's almost a completely different character, but he's still the same character.
And you look at with New Hope, he was kind of whiny in the beginning.
Yeah, but it made sense considering what he went through and how young he was. So,
Agreed.
So that was good. That was good storytelling. In this trilogy, Rey's stuff just kind of went backwards. You know what I mean? Because like, it's like in Force Awakens. I mean, it's not like she didn't have any character conflicts, but she started off OP and had like all these dope relationships with Han and Chewie, whatever. But then, but she's still OP, kind of Mary Sue. Then in The Last Jedi, they give her some conflicts and character flaws. And then in this one, they make her like super nervous, and they really try to hammer home to you that she's still kind of a rookie. But it feels less. But they didn't take away any of her powers. In each movie, Luke got stronger and stronger. Like how in the first one, he went from barely being able to escape that snow giant, that snow monster, and then in the third one, he's able to force choke dudes. So
you're saying that Rey's character development was pretty inconsistent across the trilogy.
Well, it was inconsistent, but it went forward. It went forwards in reverse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, what do you think about Rey?
I enjoyed her in this movie. I didn't like at the beginning when she had all those rocks and she's just like, "Be with me." They're not with me. Oh, but outside of that, I thought she had a pretty good character in this movie. Leia, for what they were able to do with her, did a fucking fantastic job.
Agreed.
They did the absolute best they could.
That's what I was about to say. They did the absolute best with Leia. Let's see, then there's Finn and Poe, comparing them to Last Jedi. I mean, Poe wasn't made to look like an idiot, and Finn wasn't made to look incompetent. That's what I have to say.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. Like the first scene that they have together where they're getting that information or whatever from that weird alien dude, which that was never really explained, but
yeah,
I say that because the time jump, so whatever. I love when he gets down to the cockpit. He just has that smug look on his face. He's like, all right, time to kill some ties, and then he shoots down that little thing and it just cuts one of them in half. He's like, ooh. So, and then they're all just yelling at each other. It's like, how do you like speed skipping the Falcon? It doesn't handle that well.
Yeah, I thought that light speed bit at the beginning was actually kind of neat. Let's see here. And then I have written opinion on them across the trilogy. I mean, again, we kind of talked about it. I feel like the one that had the best treatment across all three movies was Poe.
Yeah. Poe was great in the first movie. I feel like he was the best in the first movie, but he did have a good, consistent character arc.
Next, let's talk about the villains. So first I want to talk real quick on the Hux reveal. How he was the spy.
That I loved. Because okay, I said this when I first saw the movie. We finally have a Starscream character in Star Wars.
I mean, him and Ren always had a contentious relationship, so it made sense. My one thing is, I didn't know how I felt about them killing him off so quickly, only because he was a major character in those first two movies, and then right there, he's just like, bloop. Yep. I mean, it made sense, and it was kind of shocking, I guess, but yeah.
But I do love the line that he had where where Finn's like, "Why are you helping us?" He's like, "I don't care if you win. I just want Kylo Ren to lose. Just like, yeah, you're definitely a Starscream-like character.
So next is, what did you think of the Snoke reveal? That Snoke was some kind of genetic clone mutation, dude.
I thought it was interesting. I mean, it makes sense because cloning process is still pretty imperfect, and it makes sense that he would have all that scarring from being cloned.
I guess my thing was like, was he meant to be just like, was he meant to be a clone? I thought he was just a failed clone of the Emperor, but they were able to successfully reclone the Emperor, so
I don't know. It's kind of weird. Although I do say that at the beginning, you're hearing the little chants and stuff like that. That it did echo Palpatine's line from Episode 3. The dark side of the Force is the pathway to many abilities some considered to be unnatural. Yeah, that's pretty fucking unnatural.
So then next, I wanted to talk about Kylo Ren, and which also leads itself to talking about the Emperor. But you can never talk about a villain in this franchise without somehow, some way comparing them to Darth Vader. So I named this section Kylo versus Vader versus the Emperor. So listen, I genuinely think Kylo Ren is a good, interesting character. I think he probably had the best character arc throughout all three movies, and he was probably the character that was consistently portrayed the best, except for maybe or written the best, besides maybe Poe. Mm-hmm. His character explored a lot of thematic elements that have never been touched really in Star Wars, or at least in mainstream Star Wars book. Maybe you could have found a book from the Legends universe where maybe some things get that gritty or that messed up, blah, 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 blah. But like, I think he was a needed change of pace and fresh air. And I thought the climax of this movie, my issue with him dying is that Luke, Leia, and Han all explicitly died under the belief that Ben could be reformed, but then Ben just dies anyway. So it's just like, well, shit.
My wife was furious when he died. She was just like, why do you have to die? Everything else in the movie was good, but why did he have to die?
Yeah, I know. And then talking about the Emperor.
Oh, one other thing I have to say about Kylo Ren before we move on to the Emperor. My favorite little thing that he did in this movie was when Rey passed the lightsaber behind her and he got it, and then the Knights of Ren come out and he's just like, and then he starts fighting. He just does that little shrug of, all right then. Bam, bam, bam.
And then the Emperor, I like the Emperor for the same reason I like Maleficent. Not Angelina Jolie Maleficent. I mean the original movie Maleficent, and by extension Kingdom Hearts Maleficent. Because the Emperor and Maleficent, they're both just evil, okay? They don't have some they don't have some sad backstory that excuses or justifies their bad behavior. There's no Freudian excuse. There's no Start of Darkness. No, they're just evil. They're just assholes, and they like being evil, and they do stuff for evil, and they have fun doing it, and it's awesome. The Emperor has always been one of my favorite villains, just because he's just so unapologetically just pure, destructive evil, and I love that. I just love how evil he is. It's not even like he hates everything. It's not like he's angry. It's not like he's sad or something. Whereas Vader's evil was motivated by loss and despair. Kylo's was an identity crisis and betrayal. Palpatine's just evil.
Yeah. And I have to say, there was a video by Full Fat Videos that talked about Emperor Palpatine, and he called it Palpatine and the Art of Camp because of how campy of a villain he is.
But
and he still just revels in it.
but you still kind of take him seriously.
Yeah, because he is so good at being evil.
Because he's a destructive. The Emperor is a destructive force of nature, and yes, he's hammy. Yes, he's funny and quirky. But dude, he will electrify your family in front of you and laugh. He's awesome. And then
now, young Skywalker, you will die.
And then there's, of course, Darth Vader. Now, some might wonder, why are you even talking about Darth Vader? But let's be honest. Darth Vader cast a shadow over this franchise almost more than any other character. More than the Emperor, more than Luke, more than R2-D2. Every villain, not just in Star Wars, but, just if you look at the world, so many villains tried to be like Darth Vader. They ripped off Darth Vader, paid homage to Darth Vader, him and his evilness, but also his sympathetic qualities and redemption arc, and he's a high bar for anyone to clear, let alone in Star Wars. And I bring him up because Kylo was always getting compared to Darth Vader, which in a way was a core facet of his character in Force Awakens, because he compared himself to Darth Vader. So I think the dynamic between Kylo and Darth Vader, even though they've never been on screen together, is quite interesting, because the movie, what I liked about Force Awakens and Kylo's character was they went into this movie knowing he was going to get compared to Darth Vader in real life. So in universe, they made that a core concept of Kylo Ren's character. And that's always been there, So if we're rating qualities of villains, I think each three of them fit on a scale of how there's that chaotic good. There's that chaotic, lawful, and neutral.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Vader's the neutral, Emperor's the chaotic, and Kylo Ren is the lawful. You know what I mean? I really think they're all three very distinct villains with it's different motivations, different things, but you can't have a conversation about Kylo Ren without talking about Vader and now the Emperor. So I just thought it'd be a good idea to kind of give the general thoughts on Emperor in this movie, the other movies, and then also Kylo Ren. I mean, is Kylo Ren a better villain? Can't really say, but I'm not saying that this speaks for the quality, but I think he's a far more three-dimensional character than maybe even Anakin Skywalker. I mean, Anakin Skywalker had 3 entire movies to show his rise and fall like Kylo Ren did, but with Kylo Ren, it was a fall and rise, Mm-hmm. So I think Kylo Ren across this trilogy has been great. I think Adam Driver killed it. And yeah, Kylo Ren's dope. That's my TED Talk.
I agree. Adam Driver did a fantastic job in this movie, and he's done fantastic jobs in other movies too, like that one movie that he did with Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah,
I just had sex and I'm about to have nachos. This is the greatest day of my life. God, I love that scene.
What was your thoughts on Kylo throughout the movie and the trilogy, and comparing and talking about the Emperor, comparing him to Vader and stuff?
Well, I have to say that the scene I love with him in this movie is when he talks to Han Solo again, and he rejects his dark side, and I love how natural it felt. And it's kind of a retread of Force Awakens in a good way, where it's I don't know, I know what I need to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. And instead of trying to stab Han Solo, like in Force Awakens, he throws his lightsaber, and I was like, that is so powerful right there. That is so good. And he honestly had the best arc in this series. The sequel trilogy, it was really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, think about it. It's similar to Poe, because Poe had an established character arc of him being a good pilot. And then in Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, it's him learning to not be such a hot-head flyboy and actually become a leader. Whereas with Kylo, It was, yes, he was emulating his father. That's why he had Star Killer Base, because he wanted to have his own Death Star. That's why he wore a mask, because he wanted to look more like his grandfather.
Yes.
And then in the next two movies, he's having more of his own identity. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story arc. So I agree with you. Adam Driver killed it as Kylo Ren.
What did you think of the Emperor?
The Emperor, he was good, but in the intro, it felt like they were giving too much of lighting tricks to really let Ian McDiarmid shine again as the Emperor, because it felt like I get he was supposed to be like a lifeless husk sort of thing, but at the same time, Ian McDiarmid can do a really good job as a lifeless husk. You don't need to be doing all these strobe light tricks to make him look even more evil.
I mean, it worked because I thought he looked scary.
Yeah, he looked downright terrifying.
And then when he took their life force and then looked more alive, and he like got his pupils back, dude. All right, moving forward here. Oh yeah. So the next section I just wrote in all caps is Raylo.
Oh man, I love they still had a Force time connection. That was the best thing set up in The Last Jedi, and I love that it continued here. And
yes,
it became even stronger because you could actually transmute objects through each other, through the different between them. That was so cool.
Yes, I thought that I was really worried they weren't going to keep that from Last Jedi, and I was really happy they did, because I thought that was a neat concept, and they got really trippy with it because it made it feel like they existed in if they were in opposite rooms. It was like they existed in both rooms at the same time, but also none of the rooms at the same time. It was like they were in a pocket dimension that was in our dimension, because what they did in one room affected the other and vice versa. But I thought that was really neat.
Like interdimensional fighting.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, I genuinely think that their romance was actually pretty well written.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it had they didn't really tease it in Force Awakens, but they had like 2 movies of buildup, and I feel like you can really organically feel from Force Awakens to Last Jedi his mission, his fixation on her, turning into obsession, turning into, towards the end of Last Jedi, affection, and then into Rise of Skywalker, from affection to love, you know. And even Rey, you know, I gotta commend Daisy Ridley. She really portrayed the idea that she really does feel something for Ben, with Ben, but she's conflicted because of their opposing ideologies. It's like the Hatfields and McCoys, but in space.
One thing I will say, and then I have something to go back to with Force Awakens, but I love how Rey says to Kylo, "I wanted to take your hand." Ben's hand. Yes, that was a beautifully written line. But
I like that a lot.
But I gotta say, we were talking about their force timing, their force time sort of thing. It's like iPhones, but with Regina of the Minds. But anyway, so basically, mix an iPhone with a beautiful mind, and you got force time. But in The Force Awakens, do you remember when Kylo was interrogating her and was like, "Don't be afraid, I feel it too"? That right there was the beginning of their force time connection.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was more just a feeling rather than visual and audio, but it was really cool to see that.
You see, it's things like their Force connection where, like, I really do feel like they had, like, a plan at some point, or some things they had a plan mapped out from movie 7 to 9, but then Last Jedi had, like, too little creative control from J.J. Abrams and not enough commitment to their plan that it just kind of threw a wrench in everything. And then you have this movie that's, like, super rushed, but, you know, I think the connection between Kylo and Rey was really, really well written. Oh, dude, I remember immediately after that movie ended, I jumped on the internet to see the Reylo shippers and non-shippers just at war with themselves and each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh, dude, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, everyone, everywhere. You know, Reylo shippers were mad. Reylo shippers were happy. Anti-shippers were mad. Anti-shippers were happy, and they were at war. It was a civil war, but also an internet proxy war. It was, those first 5 days were such a glorious shitstorm.
Now, one thing I do want to say, you were talking about how they kind of had a plan. I feel like if they had an overarching narrative while they did these 3 movies, kind of like how the original trilogy did it, where you had Irvin Kershner and who was the other guy that did Return of the Jedi? Richard Marquand.
Yes.
Richard Marquand.
Yes.
They did their own spin on it, but they still have the story from George Lucas. Which,
yes.
If that was the case here, Last Jedi would not have been as divisive, because that meant that Rian Johnson would have been able to still do his own thing within the confines of the story treatment.
And I keep hearing that Rian Johnson's going to get his own Star Wars trilogy. And you know what? Those 3 movies may be hot pieces of garbage, but you know what? At least there'll be a consistent piece of hot garbage because it's all the same creative control from one guy.
Exactly. We forgot one character we need to talk about. Lando Calrissian.
Yes, he was the only old guy that actually got treated with respect and dignity besides Leia.
And they were talking about how he went off with Luke to find that Sith Wayfinder. Mm-hmm. I want to see that movie.
Yeah, dude. You see, now that would be an interesting movie. Give me Billy D. Williams and Mark Hamill just yucking it up in the Millennium Falcon for 2 hours. I'll watch that.
Right.
I will watch that.
Yep.
And next, I have a small section for the visuals. First, I want to talk about how we thought they did Leia. There were some times you could very obviously tell it's a body double. But again, we said it earlier, but I feel like it's worth repeating. I genuinely agree. I agree with you in that I genuinely think they did the best with what they had. So that's what I will say about Leia.
Yeah, and I agree with you that they, especially that line that she did, "Never underestimate a droid." That was so good.
Yeah.
Visuals, they were pretty much same as they usually are.
The scene where the Emperor nukes the battlefield was like the best shot in the movie. So.
Oh, absolutely. Cinematography was really good.
It was. I forgot to mention this. It was. I thought it was kind of ridiculous, but again, awesome because it's the Emperor. That every Star Destroyer could just destroy a planet now.
Now, I do think that Rian Johnson has a little more of a cinematography eye. Like, one of my favorite shots from Last Jedi is when Poe starts his mutiny, and they have that thing where they go from back to front. That was really good. Mm-hmm. But J.J. Abrams still has a pretty good eye for cinematography.
That's the thing. I think Rian Johnson's actually from, like you said, a cinematography and like setting up a shot perspective. I think he's actually pretty good at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he knows how to make a movie look good. Does he know how to write one? Mm-hmm.
Debatable.
So,
although I still want to see Knives Out because I heard that was really
pretty
good.
Yeah. So now I guess it's time to move on to our closing thoughts. The first one I have here is thoughts on the trilogy as a whole, which, if you recall, Tarantino it. Here we go. The movie started off, it started off as a retread, then like an avant-garde film experiment, and then like a hybrid. It felt like the Black Crows went to Lou Reed and then went to like Tom Waits or something. So like I feel that the movie, how do I put this? I feel like these Star Wars movies will serve as a good example in the arguments of style over substance and caring and planning over spontaneity and Chris Cartering. So I because there was a lot of really neat ideas and a lot of cool things that will never get expanded on. And yes, I know they'll write books about it, but I mean, Finn's life as a stormtrooper, I wanted to see more of that. Poe's past, I wanted to see more of that. That island of where on Endor, on Endor, where the Death Star 2 was.
It was in the Endor system. I don't think it was Endor specifically.
Right. I want to learn more about that clan of. I want to learn more about that clan of ex stormtroopers. I want to know more about. I wanted to see more of Rey training. She did a lot of doing without a lot of training. It didn't really sync up with the limited training she had. There was just. I wanted the main cast. I wanted Luke, Han, and Leia to share scenes together again. I think these movies, because of course there's going to be more Star Wars, but I think these movies will serve as an example to not just Star Wars, but to also other movies that, whereas with the prequels, maybe you suffer from too much planning, but with this, you suffer from not enough. And you suffer when you try to recapture. These movies, I think, are a good amalgamation and analogy for, as a cautionary tale of nostalgia and recapturing and recreating over homaging and using the past to propel the future, because no one had a problem with there being new characters, and it's not. And some people, when The Force Awakens, when we just saw those trailers, there was probably almost no one that was like, "Oh, I'm just going to see the original characters." We wanted to see these new characters and see what they would do and see how they would interact with the old guard. Because the idea was, unlike the prequels, where except for arguably Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, there's no torches to pass anything down to. Whereas with this, the old guard needed to pass down the torch, and we never really got that. Like the torch was given to them, but you never felt like they earned them in some places. I think this trilogy needs to serve as an example of the importance of structuring your trilogy, of clear, consistent, creative direction, and most importantly, I'm not saying mess with the formula, but what I am saying is that you could be experimental and do new things with Star Wars, but you can't do it at the expense of trying to come off like you think you're smarter than the fans, or like you're trying to outsmart the fans, or like you're trying to do something different just for the sake of doing something. There's a lot to take away. There could be essays written about this trilogy, but all in all, while there was a lot of good things, and I think Kylo Ren is one of the best characters in the current Star Wars canon, I have to be honest and say I think more than anything else, this trilogy will always be remembered as one of the great pieces of squandered potential in cinematic, in all of cinema, and that was how we Tarantino'd it.
I feel like this trilogy was okay, but it could have been a whole lot better.
Yes.
Again, if they had an overarching story treatment for the trilogy before they started filming them. If they had done that, it would have been much, much better.
And like they worked on Force Awakens for 2 years, 3 years? I mean, and I truly thought that they had a plan. I really thought they had a plan, but 4 years later, here we are, and now I mean, no one knows what the hell we're doing. Star Wars' future's in limbo. The Mandalorian's doing great, but it's time will tell if Disney can rebuild the trust in the Star Wars franchise. Let's hope we just have to hope whatever new show, whatever new trilogy, starts off with a blank slate. We just have to hope that it just gets off on a better foot.
Mm-hmm.
Next is thoughts on all 9 episodes as a whole. And the reason I wrote that is because episodes 1 through 9 are the Skywalker saga, as they kept saying. So I always used to look at it as, the first 3 episodes, right? It's the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker. Then the second one, it's the rise and fall of Darth Vader. And in the sequel trilogy, it felt more like the legacy, the legend of Skywalker, the legend of Darth Vader. It's funny, thinking about all 9 episodes as a whole from beginning to end, and in some cases it's unintentional, there really is a lot more coherence and consistency than people want to initially think. Like if you watch from Phantom Menace to The Rise of Skywalker, besides seeing some dips and some rise and falls in quality, there really is a consistent story about Anakin Skywalker, his family, and the impact they left on the Star Wars universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Skywalker saga is, despite the lows that it went with some episodes, like for me, episode 8, for most people, episode 2, just, not counting the shows or the books or the games, I really think that overall the Skywalker saga it's a sound, solid saga. And I think whatever comes next, because Rey, Finn, and Poe, I mean, their characters are done after episode 9, aren't they?
I think so, yeah.
So whatever new trilogy comes along, they're gonna have to it's the same universe, but they got to create a whole new cast of characters. They have to create a whole new villain. And I think the real test is going to be if they can make a villain without connecting them to the Emperor or Darth Vader. I mean, can they? Referencing them is one thing, but being like a great grandson or a genetic clone or something like that.
From what I hear, I think they're in talks to do a trilogy for Knights of the Old Republic. So getting Darth Revan on screen, that'd be insane.
Dude, Darth Revan and Dark Malak, dude, let's do it.
Right.
I would. That'd be rad. But anyway, I think the saga as a whole, it's one of the it's Star Wars, episode 1 to 9. I think overall, if you were to do a thing where you watch all 9 episodes and as in a marathon or whatever, I think it's a pretty clear story, clear beginning, middle, and end. And we didn't really mention it, but the end of this movie where the Skywalkers are gone, but Rey continues on with took the Skywalker name. I'm not sure if it's satisfactory, but considering just how cursed the Skywalker family was, I guess it ended one of the better ways it could have, I guess. I don't know. I heard they shot 8 different endings for this movie.
For me, the Skywalker saga as a whole, the Emperor's story just as much as it was the Skywalker story.
I forgot to bring that up. Yes, it really was. And technically he won.
Yeah. So I feel for them ending it off, starting it with Palpatine, ending it with Palpatine was good. And yeah, I agree. I feel there's some peaks and valleys for the series, but as a whole, I feel like it was a fitting saga.
I also forgot to mention this in the Reylo section, but the movie basically said that they were soulmates, right?
Yeah.
But
they're a fourth dyad or something.
Right, but the way fourth dyads work in Star Wars is that literally one can't live without the other. So Rey should have been dead, So I'm just saying, either one, they didn't know that, or B, they did that on purpose so they could give you the impression like, oh, maybe he'll come back, or maybe he's still alive, or maybe it's some poignant bullshit like, well, he's always alive in the Force, and the Force is all around us, and
Or what about this? What about Rey still died, and the rest of the movie is just a fever dream or something?
oh god, don't give me that Final Fantasy VIII bullshit. So the next, don't have to spend too much time on this because we talked about it already, but I had this section, J.J. Abrams versus Rian Johnson versus George Lucas. I will always passionately defend George Lucas because I feel that man has been shitted on and disrespected and taken for granted since, when did Phantom Menace come out? Since the 90s. I think, better or worse, his consistent creative division shaped Star Wars for what it was, into what it was. And if you watch episodes 1 through 6, you see a clear, concise story, you know? And with J.J. Abrams, again, I think he had the potential to do what Lucas did and oversee production, but he didn't. And Rian Johnson, I think he's a guy that, if left to his own devices, might be able to do, like how about this? Okay, I do not want them to give him the Knights of the Old Republic trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But if they want to give him a trilogy of a new cast of characters set after the Skywalker saga, you know, and, you know, he wants to create his own characters and tell his own story, you know what? Honestly, even if it's a pile of crap, it'll be a consistent one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I'll say, I feel like Rian Johnson can actually do some pretty good stuff. I mean, he directed Fly from Breaking Bad, for God's sakes.
yeah.
And that's one of the best written episodes of the show. And it's literally just Walter Wright trying to get rid of a housefly in the meth lab.
Honestly, I'm actually a little excited to see Rian Johnson's Star Wars thing. Maybe it's morbid curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm interested. I don't know if I would trust J.J. Abrams with Star Wars ever again if he's not going to have a backbone.
And it's one of those things that I feel like it's kind of unfair to like, I get it. We're gonna shit on Rian Johnson because that's the only movie he's had in the Star Wars universe. But who knows? It could be better if he has his, like you were saying, it could be better if he has his own trilogy with his own character.
Yes, it's his own creative control. It's his own it'll exist in the overall continuity, but you know, it's his own continuity. It's his own devices, his own writing. I think a trilogy under Rian Johnson, while it might not be good, it would at least be consistent. Lastly, just a quick fan base retrospective. Like, Star Wars isn't dead, but my God, dude, it is in desperate need of Star Wars went through. Okay, so if we're gonna assume that Star Wars is a regular person and was born 1977 when the movie came out, and it is now 2020. It is now 2020. That, you know, Star Wars is 43 years old. The Star Wars fan base as a sentient person is in a midlife crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wants to be young and hip, but it also wants to relive its glory days. Hence this trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and honestly, movies like Rogue One and Solo, those are like the stories where like dad or like dad or mom or grandma or grandpa or whatever's had a little too much to drink, and then they start telling you old war stories. Or their days as a biker. The fan base just needs to heal. I've always given the fan base a lot of crap, but there have been times since The Force Awakens come out where this time the fan base didn't do it to itself completely. It did it to itself during the prequel trilogy, but it didn't do it to itself this time. I think there was a plan in place to do this movie to appeal to a certain demographic. I don't think they're gonna weed out. They were trying to weed out the old fans, but they definitely didn't care if they pushed them away.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's rights and wrongs on both sides, but the fan base is hurt right now.
Yeah. And it's sad because you get that vocal minority of people that are just like, I hate everything Star Wars now because of Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, and it wasn't what I wanted. But it's like, yeah, but it was never really ours to begin with. It was more of George Lucas's, and I get it now that it's with Disney. It's hard to accept a lot more of it because you're dealing with a corporation rather than an individual. And I feel like it's a lot more difficult to accept things because it's a corporation now. But like you were saying, it's going through some growing pains.
Let's not pretend that some people's bias towards Disney does not affect people's opinions of Star Wars and Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm. It was a cautionary tale, is what I'll say this trilogy was.
The last bit I have here is final goodbyes to Star Wars. And what I mean by that is not, leaving the fandom, because I thought after this movie I might be done. But truth is, we were told for like a while that this was the last movie in the Skywalker saga. And you hear that and it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. But watching the movie really hit me. It's like, yeah, Star Wars isn't over, but in a way, Star Wars is over. Star Wars as we know it, as we knew it, is over because the Skywalker saga is done. And now we have to look to the future. And now it's time it was time when the new trilogy happened. But now it's really time for new characters to rise and for new stories to be told. And I'm not going to lie, at the end of the movie, through all the ups and downs, I found myself being sad because, it's like, it's not because Star Wars was ending, but like I said, Star Wars as we knew it had ended. A story that was started in 1977 just ended in 2019. The First Order, the Resistance, Kylo Ren, that was able to get assimilated into it because, the clone troopers, the droids, stormtroopers, the First Order troopers, and the Rebellion and the Resistance, they were all under the overall umbrella of, Skywalker and Palpatine. But now there is no more Skywalker and there is technically no more Palpatine. So now Star Wars has to start fresh. They have to come up with, quote unquote, a new empire. They have to have a new resistance. They have to have a new conflict because, and I know they will for the side stories, the side stories can go back to the past as many times as they want to, and we can get a Darth Vader scene here and there and get some Stormtrooper scenes here and there. But for the numbered movies, they can't rely on the Stormtroopers anymore. They can't rely on Darth Vader or the Sith even really at this point anymore. They have to come up with new ideas. And so, Star Wars is, I guess when I say final goodbyes to Star Wars, it's not even just goodbye to my childhood. It's a goodbye to a way of life, because Star Wars is such a big juggernaut. I always tell my dad, he can remember when Star Wars came out, but people like you and me and like my brothers and stuff and your wife, we were born into a world where Star Wars was legitimately as big a name as Mickey Mouse, as Batman, as Spider-Man, just a big old franchise. And so it's there, but the story's over. And now it's time for a new chapter, a new saga. It's kind of funny because this 40-year-old saga came to an end the same year as Kingdom Hearts' 17-year saga came to an end. And now it's looking toward the future with new villains and new things. So now Star Wars has to do the same.
Yeah,
So
this era of Star Wars is done.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's like, it's like buy Star Wars, it's like thanks for the memories. I mean, I was never gonna leave Star Wars.
Yeah,
I love it too much. I really do.
Yeah.
So even if they do the Knights of Old Republic, or they don't, or even if Rian Johnson's trilogy sucks ass, I'll be here. Maybe I'll watch Solo sometime, but I can't give up Star Wars.
Yep. It's too ingrained. But again, I'm excited for the future because now we know that Disney has gone through this troubling time and they're coming out all the better. I mean, look at The Mandalorian. It's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like if Sergio Leone wrote a Star Wars show.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's under the guise of, or under the tutelage of Dave Filoni, who's been with Star Wars for a very long time.
Yes.
And Jon Favreau, who, grandfather of the MCU. So, I mean, it's in good hands.
Yeah. You know what? Star Wars, I think Star Wars will be all right. 43-year storyline, just, I mean, what else can you say except, that's that.
Yep.
That's all, folks.
So, yeah, thank you guys for watching this episode or listening to this episode of the Nerdcast. Once again, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Go ahead and leave a comment if you'd like to contribute to the conversation. And if you enjoyed it, go ahead and give it a like. And as always, link to the Nerdcast episode is in the description for audio listening. And we will talk to you guys later. That's it from me, Dark Samus 288.
And me, Snakes, again.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
May the Force be with you.